Good morning and welcome to episode 47 of the Jaguar Report podcast. My name is Gus Logue. I'm joined by my co-host John Shipley. John, today's the off day for training camp. Feels pretty good, doesn't it?
Dude, I have been looking forward to this day for some time. Like
It's the
there's
last off day.
like I know we haven't done a pod during training camp. And that's because it was literally like 11 practices in what, like 12 days, 13 days, something like that. Like it's been an insane grind, but the grind is ever slowly coming to a halt. So I've loved today, guys.
Yeah, and thank goodness they their first two preseason games are both away.
Preach,
That'll be pretty nice.
preach.
Yeah, I was out for the first 2 days of training camp, but I was there for the last 10. So it has definitely been a grind, and I'm feeling the season kind of like rain down on us with you. But it's the dog days of training camp, and as you said, it's the first time we're podcasting in almost a month. So we're gonna spew out some training camp takes. We're gonna go group by group. So let's just start with the skill position players. John, what have you seen out of that group?
Okay. I don't know if this should be considered a hot take since expectations, at least locally. Yeah, coming right out the gate, man. Right out the gate.
Okay.
Like, I know everybody in Jacksonville, obviously already thinks very highly of the skill group. I'm gonna say my hot take is the Jags have a top 3 passing game in the NFL this year, so they're better than at least one of Buffalo or Cincinnati.
Okay. What are we measuring? So I can put it down on the record. What are we measuring top 3 by? Like points scored, DVOA.
You would make me accountable.
Get here.
You would make me accountable. All right, let's do best majority out of DVOA.
All right, Jags will have a top 3 passing DVOA by the season end.
And no, okay, yeah.
And what?
Let's just leave it there. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, let it die. That's a good one to start, though.
Yeah. You've had a month to, boil up any hot takes. You have any for us out the gate, or?
I've got one that we can get to later when we talk about a different group.
Okay.
I only had like one based on today's what we're talking about.
So how has it?
I'll drop a few for next time.
How has the experience been for you so far? Covering a training camp for the first time.
It's been pretty awesome. I've been mostly just trying to kind of get my bearings and do more networking than actually watching, and it's so different watching a practice than a game because there's just no replay, and I don't know, it's hard to watch everything at once. So I've been trying to focus on a couple of certain aspects rather than trying to see everything because that's just impossible. Yeah. But I mean, on one hand, it's been really awesome to just kind of get out in the atmosphere of a football practice because that's why we do what we do. We love football, so that's really fun. But it's also brutally hot out. This whole month has been insane. So even just standing there has been not a pleasant experience in its own right.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. Well, it's been cool to have you out there. The only person who can see everything is the columnist Gene Fournette and his handy binoculars, and otherwise the rest of us are mere mortals. But that's basically my process too for watching camp practices. It's before play, I say, okay, I'm gonna watch either this specific group or this specific player or two, and not watch if you watch it just the front to end result of the play. I feel like you miss so much.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so and so caught the ball, but I don't know what the hell happened elsewhere.
Right. And then it's they'll try to use bunch formations and overload a blitz on one side to distract the opposing team or the opposing side, but it also distracts us because we're oh, we're looking at that eye candy when the play actually happens elsewhere. So
yeah,
I've definitely been caught a few times on stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, I mean, overall, looking at the Jaguars skill group, I think any good receiver room in the NFL to me has a complementary set like room, like guys who can work off of each other. And I feel like they have that, to an extent. I feel like Ridley can be a prototypical X, outside receiver. Yeah, he's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy in a straight line, but he's going to get open on the outside and in isolated situations. I feel like Zay is a good possession guy. I mean, he's come up big in the red zone, throughout training camp. I'd honestly say he's been Trevor's favorite target in the red zone and training camp. And then Kirk, of course, out the slot on option routes, just getting him in space underneath the intermediate. I feel like they have that nice complementary, trio. And I mean, I've been thoroughly impressed and then some by like the passing game in general, but by their top 3 receivers throughout training camp so far. Like I think any of the expectations that were had for them, and they were obviously high, they've met or exceeded them so far. And maybe that's a case of they're not playing the best secondary in the NFL in practice every day.
Right.
But I don't know, man. I feel like they've really been clicking.
I agree. I mean, it helps that like the wide receivers always practice right in front of the media during individual drills, and then like during special teams they'll go over and do drills too. But like I would say Ridley has been arguably the best player I've seen during camp, and Zay Jones has probably been the most impressive player I've seen just based on like expectations going in. I feel like the two of them are like have kind of like separated themselves from the pack. Like Ridley is just so awesome to watch on every route, regardless of like whether the ball goes to him or whether the ball is even caught. Just because he's so good on like especially outside releases where he's like going vertical, and then as you said, he doesn't have like elite speed, but he has good enough speed where like it's a threat.
Yeah.
But then he like his suddenness is just so elite where he can like break it off at any point and like he's just wide open for like a full split second. And that's enough with Trevor Lawrence. So like he's been great to watch on every route, as said. And then Zay has been awesome in the red zone. He had one day where he had 4 touchdowns, which is definitely like the biggest touchdown day by anyone in camp so far. But even like throughout camp, he's been looked super impressive physically.
I mean, I feel like, and I thought this the other day, I want to say it was Sunday's practice when Ridley had 2 or 3 really nice catches. That one-handed catch along the left sideline, another one where he beat Chris Claybrooks, and then he had the third impressive one-handed sideline. I feel like him and Trevor Lawrence have already, like, that chemistry has already kind of been impressive. That specific connection. I feel like it's been like best case scenario so far. Like I don't think like sometimes you put a quarterback and receiver together and for whatever reason, like the timing just doesn't seem like it's there, early on, sometimes ever. But man, it seems like they're like already on the right foot.
I agree. I think like thinking back on it, they've had like a couple of like mess ups or like situations where they don't connect, but like Lawrence has also had that situation with every other player. It's not
or with a lot of them. Ridley is just like not like that one day where he had like 6 drops. It's like he's getting open, the ball's right there, and it's just like didn't catch it. Right. I'm with you.
Like even his bad days are like still you can kind of spin it in a way that it's good, and it was an impressive performance.
This is the spin zone, baby.
Yeah, he said the day after he was like, "Yeah, yesterday was a good day."
Yeah. Hey, Drew, what, like 3 penalties? Doesn't matter how many would have.
That one on Darius was a little bit soft. He just kind of fell down, but that's true. And yeah, the ball still got to him. It's just finishing. That's like the whole thing with the whole team. But
so I know I've talked to you in the past about like I've always had to take that Trevor Lawrence is more impressive in games than practices, and I'll be honest, the last couple of practices he's kind of been on a heater. But from what you've seen so far, is that kind of the impression that you've gotten?
Definitely. And I think like one other thing is like I've seen a couple articles this summer about like how Lawrence is like one of the coaching tips for him is to like be more Clark Kent in some situations than Superman, even though we all know he can be Superman, and to like play point guard more than shooting guard more often. So I think that's like been reflective in camp a little bit. Like he's been checking down like a decent amount. He had like the lowest check down rate among any quarterback last year. And there's been like a fair amount of like check downs and like kind of safer throws, and he hasn't really forced a lot. So I think that's made him seem like a little bit less exciting than what you'd expect for like arguably a top 5 quarterback. But I'm excited to see if that kind of carries over during the
Yeah.
preseason, if he's like a little bit more conservative and then starts actually letting it rip in regular season games.
Yeah, off top of my head, there haven't been many like decisions where you're just like, okay, what the hell were you thinking that? Like there was that one like interception Chad Muma had like in like the first week of camp where he was trying to throw it to Ridley over the middle, and you're like, you missed the 250-pound linebacker just standing there in the lane you're throwing it to. But otherwise, like I'm with you. I feel like he's made good decisions. He's checked down a good bit. I feel like his touch has honestly improved. That's one area his first 2 seasons, especially in the red zone,
Yeah.
I thought was an issue. But other than one day, like on the first week of camp where he missed a couple throws in the red zone, I think it was like honestly the first red zone day of the entire camp. Other than that, I feel like his touch has been impressive. And I feel like the big thing is his overall processing speed and just how it feels like he's getting through plays and getting through his progressions. To me, it very much looks like a guy who is now comfortable in the system. Because to me, it didn't look like that last year's training camp. I know that's obviously like a point of reference, for me, but I felt like in last year's camp, it was a little bit of okay, come on, get rid of the ball, dude, etc. And now I feel like he's flying through progressions.
Yeah, I mean, I can't compare it to the last camp, but
You
it
could try.
definitely it looks fast to me. Like in basketball, you can kind of tell just based on like the shooter's form whether or not it's going to go in based on like just how like confident of a shot it is almost, or just how smooth it looks. And that's like watching Trevor Lawrence play. Like you can tell how good he is and how many throws he's making, kind of based on the smoothness. And he's looked pretty smooth.
Yeah,
I
that
would
he
definitely
has.
agree with your touch point that it's like been better, and especially in the red zone.
Yeah, 100%. And then the skill group, like the rest of the receivers, that's to me like people like ask me a lot about competition battles, and like unless you're like deeply unwell about football and like the second and third string battles excite you, there aren't many that are going to excite you like on this team. Like that, literally returning every starter other than Jawan Taylor from the playoffs, and obviously they lost Arden Key, etc. But it's basically the same team from last year. So there aren't that many starting jobs up for grabs. But I do feel like in terms of like interesting camp battles, that wide receiver room after his first 3 guys and Jamal Agnew, it's interesting what they could do because I feel like that room's had a good camp. Tim Jones was obviously on the roster last year. They clearly, like him. He's a very good blocker. Elijah Cooks, the undrafted free agents, had a great camp. He's made a lot of impressive grabs. Seth Williams has had a really good camp. Kevin Austin Jr. has been singled out by Press Taylor, Doug Peterson, and Trevor Lawrence
My
himself.
guy.
Yeah, there you go. And God, I feel like I'm still missing people. Parker Washington, it feels like he has a chance to make the roster as a 5th or 6th guy, mainly because it seems like they want him to be Agnew's like backup as the return specialist. So
Mhm.
maybe they want to develop a role for him there. But and then charge on, or Big 12 rep Jacob Harris got singled out by Doug Peterson last Saturday too. So there's like 5 or 6 guys I feel like battling for like 1 or 2 spots, and it's tough for me to lean one way or another because I feel like they've all been impressive at one time or another.
Yeah, I feel like your guy, the UCF Harris, has been like the most improved player throughout camp, because I remember in mini camp he had a few like brutal drops and like just didn't really look like he belonged. But he's been impressive really in the last like week. He's had a few touchdown grabs. And then like Williams is a guy that's impressed me and like hasn't been, maybe I feel like he hasn't been consistently great enough to like maybe make it onto the roster, since he'll be towards the bottom of that group. But he has like impressed me for a number of reps, and same with Kevin Austin. Like his improvement from last camp to this camp, even though I wasn't there last camp, like I remember reading a lot about like his drop issues and
No,
inconsistencies, and he's been pretty good like throughout this camp.
it was legit. Like last year, he was like player 88 or 89 on the roster in training camp. Like it was bad last year. Like he's definitely improved a ton.
Yeah, so it is definitely an interesting group. I mean, at the top or closer to the top of it, would you say Tim Jones's job is as safe as Agnew's? Because Agnew's is definitely safe.
No, no, no. Like Agnew's like a lock to be on the roster, whereas Tim Jones, I feel like, is still competing with these other guys. Like it shocked a lot of people last year when Tim Jones made the roster over Laquan Treadwell. It wouldn't like be a shock to the system this year, in my opinion, if Kevin Austin made it over Tim Jones.
Well,
Like I feel like competition has been that good.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't really like seen a ton from Tim Jones, honestly, compared to these other guys. I mean, CJ Beathard did like underthrow him on 2 touchdown passes the other day, but I don't know. Like, I feel like the coaching staff across the board on every position group has kind of like leaned towards the veterans, and like someone's going to have to really, really prove it if they're going to like steal a starting spot or even like move up a spot on the depth chart. So I'm interested to see like whether someone can make that convincing jump over Tim Jones.
Oh no, they definitely have. Like I like that you point out that they've kind of turned more towards veterans than anything. Like I keep getting asked about the day 3 defensive backs and like any of them pushing Trey Herndon, and I don't want to be like break people's hearts. I'm like, man, they're all with the third team. Like they're not getting any snaps, like important ones.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So
Gregory Jr. getting a lot of those nickel snaps.
That's
probably the most nickel snaps behind Herndon, right?
Yeah, he's definitely the number 2 nickel right now, I'd say. Yeah.
Have you seen him take like really any outside reps, or has it been all slot?
Mostly slot.
What about last year? Because I feel like he was definitely mostly outside last year.
Yeah, last year was mostly outside. I didn't see him in the slot much last year.
I wonder if they like think they can use him in both, or if they're like, nah, he's only slot now.
It's interesting because when Tyson got his concussion, I thought they were going to move Herndon outside just for the sake of this is what we would actually do if this happened, and put Greg Jr. inside. But they just kept Herndon inside, which makes me think they just want the nickel like to be its own thing. Like just focus on this one position, don't cross train.
True.
Which fair enough. It's a different enough role, but
yeah.
So I mean, the wide receivers has obviously been impressive. The tight end room, the Jaguars have a deep tight end room. I never thought I'd say that in my life. It's funny because like these two things are true at the same time. I've both been thoroughly impressed by the tight end room, and I also think their 2nd round pick is like the 3rd or 4th best tight end on the roster.
Yeah, I'm like wondering if he's gonna like because 3rd is like he's 3rd at best. I'm wondering if he's gonna drop to 4th because Garrett Prince has been pretty good like all camp. He's definitely one of like the biggest winners or risers or anything.
Yeah, 100%. Like it really, like the Dan Arnold role basically last year, where it seemed like whenever they did want to go 2 tight ends last year, instead of playing Ingram and Hurts, they'd want to go with like 2 of the big jumbo slot type guys. So they would put Arnold and Ingram on the field together. I feel like you'll see Garrett Prince, and not a big role, but I feel like he'll carve out some kind of role. And like if I had to guess, like rank their targets that you think you're going to get. Obviously, Ingram's number 1. I'd say Prince is number 2 over Farrell and Strange. And then, like Luke Farrell is somebody who they obviously like a lot. Press Taylor basically said at the start of camp, like he has a chance to take the Chris Manhurst role as the top inline tight end on the roster. It's just he's never going to be a guy that really stands out in training camp because it seems like every route they ask him to run is like 5 yards or less. So he's definitely not running the same stuff as these other guys. Like, have you seen him do anything other than like a hitch all training camp?
No.
And it's not because
it's been all blocking. I feel like
yeah. And
even when like they're doing like the receiving drills, he's the guy pretending to block.
Exactly. So he's not going to see very many footballs go his way. And then Brendan Strange has obviously been much more involved in the passing game in team drills than Luke Farrell has. I wouldn't say as much as Garrett Prince has, but I mean, I feel like he's been better in training camp, especially since Patzer came on than he was during the offseason. Like, definitely seems like it's slowing down for him a bit, and definitely seems like he's a guy who he's just better with pads on than he is on air because physicality is a big part of his game. And he gave a vicious stiff arm to Rayshawn Jenkins during team drills yesterday. That was it was impressive, and it helped them pick up like an extra like 10 yards or something like that.
He's definitely been like one of the most improved players throughout camp, and I think you're right about like the pads coming on being better for him because it's just like it's his game more better.
Yeah,
he's like player and more of like I don't know, a technique player, I guess.
Exactly, like Garrett Prince will look better when they're running in shorts and the helmet than Brendan Strange will, Totally. But Brendan Strange, when you put the pads on, he'll have plays like that where you're like, okay, he offers something different.
Right. I definitely feel way more optimistic about the tight end room than I thought I would have like 6 months ago because it was like, oh, Arnold and Manhartz are free agents, and Engram is also was going to be a free agent technically before he got tagged. So it was like, oof, like what's going to happen? They've got nothing. But even though they added a second round tight end who's going to be the third or fourth player in snaps played, like the depth has been impressive.
Deep room, baby. And
You
that's not even getting into the murderer's row of Sammy Reyes, Josh Peterson, and Derek Parrish.
know?
Got nothing there.
Nothing there.
Sammy Reyes would be an interesting practice squad guy just because he's so raw and he's obviously a freak. Peterson and Parrish, I got none.
Yeah, they're like they're candidates for first player cut.
Yeah.
2000.
And then, like, it's interesting to me, like, Prescott asked about the fullbacks like a week ago, fullback in the offense. And he was like, yeah, I've never been in an offense with a fullback. He's like, we always just use tight ends for any fullback stuff. And then he's like, yeah, Evan can do it. Brendan can do it. And I'm like, yeah, so you're prepared for this guy to not do it.
I thought it was interesting though, like the very first live red zone play that they did, where like ETN scored on the pitch to the left. Like they had Bigsby lined up at running back, or lined up at fullback. So I'm sure like tight ends will mostly play the fullback role, but I think there'll be a few situations like that where Tank also does it,
Yeah, no, it definitely
but not
feels like,
anyone but Parrish.
yeah, they definitely have options. And that brings us, to the running back room, obviously. I mean, what have you been your impressions of that room so far and how things might shake out between, ETN and the Tank?
The Tank has continued to be one of the most impressive players during camp, I think. I mean, like just the other day, he had a 70-yard touchdown run where he was untouched, and Cam Robinson had a nice outside block. But
Cam's
like
had a good camp too.
Cam has had a good camp, but I mean, Tank has had, in Coach Campa's words, good eyes, and like vision was a thing that the coaches were obviously looking for, and like based on like their comments on him and based on his performance in camp, like it seems like he's got it. So that'll be huge for like just inside the 20s. But then like in the situations that he's been in like short yardage and goal line, he's been impressive there too. Like as you were saying a few days ago, full steam ahead, like a freight train. Like he looks like he belongs.
So I wrote that in some fantasy like account, retweeted it, and somebody replied saying, "Did his mom write this?" You asses! But he's been that impressive to me. Do you know it's a take that among fantasy people that he isn't a big back?
I mean, ETN is bigger than him.
He's listed bigger than him, but is he bigger than him? What do your eyes tell you?
No, yeah,
what do your eyes tell you?
If you had to like sort what type of running back he is, he's definitely like a bruiser.
I think he's way bigger than ETN.
Or like a one cut zone.
I had somebody say that to me yesterday when I tweeted ETN get the first 2 goal line carries. They're like, well, Tank will of course get them because his name's Tank, even though he's smaller and slower and weaker than ETN. I see it like Tank was listed 5'11", 210. ETN was 5'10", 215. I think Tank looks way bigger than ETN. But what do your eyes say, Gus? Tell me what your eyes say.
I mean, yeah, my eyes say Tank is more powerful. I guess ETN mostly just has a couple inches on him, which like adds some pounds too. But yeah, Tank looks like he's got like that look in his eyes where he's like aggressive and like finishing every rep.
This has not gone the way I wanted.
What?
I wanted you to stand with me passionately saying Tank is the biggest running back in football since William the Fridge Parrish. But alas, I'm with you. I've been impressed by him. I thought ETN's first touchdown yesterday in goal line, that toss around the left, I thought that was a really impressive play. Like he basically broke, a tackle from Muma and then a tackle from Allen at the goal line and still scored. I think ETN's had a good camp. Like it's so tough for me to figure out how they're going to determine touches at the running back position, just because ETN, I feel like it still has so much untapped potential. And how do you take a guy off the field if he's ripping off long runs? But then also how many touches are there even going to be for the running back position, to begin with?
I think like kind of like how we talk about the receivers where it can go week to week and
Yeah.
targets like Zay could have 10 week and 1 the next. And same for pretty much everyone but Ridley probably. Like that could be true of the running game too in terms of like who the opponent is and like what type of fronts they're seeing and what they want to do specifically in the run game because I think um until like they know that they can get like better vision inside the tackles from the running backs, like their go-to run is like outside stuff with ETN, like to get him out in space. Like that's just like the most efficient play for them, and probably like the thing they ran the most, along with like inside zone because they're just an inside zone modeled team with all the shotgun towards the end of the season. Um, but like if they like start the season and against teams that like they feel like they can like get some like really consistent inside stuff with and like on stuff that they trust Tank with over like gap stuff maybe. I don't know. I think it could depend week on week.
That's fair. That's fair. And then the rest of the running back room, Jermichael Hasty, Snoop Connor, Dearness Johnson. I feel like Dearness Johnson's had some impressive plays throughout camp. And then he's also been a pretty obvious factor on special teams. I think that's his ticket to making the roster. He was a special teams ace in Cleveland. He played like 50% of their special team snaps each of the last 2 seasons. I feel like Hasty has had, the kind of training camp you'd expect from Hasty. It maybe hasn't stood out in a big way, but it's obvious that he's like higher up in the pecking order than, some of the other guys. So my prediction of those being the top 4 running backs, I think is still holding true.
Definitely. And like even kind of spot on since the signing that Dearness is going to be more of a special teams guy than like actually provide significant rushing value. But like my biggest surprise from the like unofficial depth chart being released today was that Bigsby was over Hasty in the depth chart. Just because like I just said earlier about how the Jag staff seems like they're willing to like let the proven veterans kind of like be on the top of the depth chart. So I guess it seems like Tank has already proven otherwise, and that he's maybe gotten that backup role already.
That's a great point. That really is because like Hasty like saw a ton of snaps last year, so for Bigsby to already be above him, that's a good point. We are going to break real quick for our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to talk about everybody's favorite topic, the offensive line. Gus, the Jaguars' offensive line has been like probably the most debated part of the team other than the pass rush over the last couple of months. They're obviously working through some things right now, which I think is like the biggest thing clouding my evaluation of the team. It's like Cam Robinson's suspended, so he's obviously working mostly with the second team. So you're not seeing much of what their line will look like when he returns.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Barch is on the PUP list. He's not practicing. Tyler Shatley, who's thankfully is okay. He's a great guy, longest tenured Jaguar on the team. Had that AFib situation last week. He's still going through individual stuff, but he's not doing any contact stuff right now. But so he's out right now. Walker Little can't play guard right now because he's playing tackle because Cam's suspended. It seems like the line right now, it's like so in flux that it's almost hard to even really evaluate it.
There's a lot going on. Like Brewer was taking center snaps the other day.
There's a lot going on, dude.
Shatley was out, and like the coaches, especially Press Taylor, I feel like keeps kind of like preaching versatility on the offensive line and like how that's like a good way to provide value and kind of stay on the roster and get snaps. But like they're almost getting forced to like show that versatility now instead of like showing it in case they need it later. It's definitely a little bit of a merry-go-round.
Yeah, it 100% is. And then that's not even like including Anton Harrison missed like 3 or 4 of the first day in pads and team drills with a shoulder injury. He's been back since Saturday. He's been back like in team drills. And, they had Blake Hance at right tackle, Josh Wells at right tackle. Blake Hance will probably start at left guard on Saturday. Who is Blake Hance? They're all quick questions.
You don't want to know.
To be asked. So say everybody gets healthy, for week 1. What's your concern level if there is one with the unit?
I mean, it's kind of the same concern that I have with the pass rush and even the secondary. It's just like right now it's okay, can probably hold up against most teams and like it'll probably really only be a problem until like you get to the playoffs. But if like just one of your like key guys in that unit goes down, then it is like massive trouble. So as you said, with all of like the tackle movement and then Chatley with the abnormal heartbeat, like they've been having to do it now. But so like I don't know how do you scale
Yeah,
like
it's
how
tough.
worried you are? I would say like a 6 out of 10 as of now. But like if Shatley like doesn't start week 1 for some reason, even though I'd probably guess like right now that he would, then it's climbing to like a 7 or 8.
Yeah, I'm with you. Has there been any guy that has, stood out to you who maybe isn't one of the, the Brandon Sheriffs or the Walker Littles or the Anton Harrisons of the group?
I would say Cooper Hodges has definitely stood out. I don't know if it's more of his energy rather than his
Uh,
actual play,
It's a little both.
but I mean he's been delivering cartwheels before every practice, getting the crowd fired up. He was in a little bit of a scuffle during the stadium practice on Saturday.
He's going to lead camping fights.
Now that's a stat we're in training camp.
That's better than any training camp passing stat you see.
Sure that. I mean, we've heard from the coaching staff a ton about like how they want more physicality up front and where they want more guys like Sheriff, who are just like mean and mugged and in the trenches and yada yada. So feels like Cooper Hodges may supply some of that, and
Yeah, I mean, when he was
he's
drafted,
also been playing with like second or third teamers, and like his play hasn't necessarily been like standout good to me.
that's fair. I mean, when he was drafted, it felt to me like kind of like a throwaway, like project pick. I'd
Mm-hmm.
almost pencil him in on the 53-man roster.
I was gonna say I would. I feel like he might be the day 3 guy that has like the best chance of like being on the roster, which I definitely would not have thought of
Yeah.
on draft weekend.
I mean, I feel like he's been a little like more than just a cartwheels before practice, yada yada. Like I feel like he's been impressive in team drills. Obviously, had a big block on Tank's touchdown in space yesterday, but I feel like he's held his own even against like the likes of Foley Fatakasi, Devon Hamilton. Like he's a strong dude, so he's definitely been someone who has stood out to me. Uh, Walker Little is another guy who obviously he's one of the big names of the line, but I feel like he's had a great camp. I also feel like you can see he's really matured into his like NFL frame. I mean, when he entered the NFL in 2021, he was 6'7", and I like probably the thinnest like offensive lineman they had, on the roster. I mean, you go look back at pictures of him his rookie year, and he almost looked like a jumbo, tight end. And now he's added. I think it's clear he's added a ton of strength. Like it's at the point where like he's anchoring bull rushes from Trayvon Walker, and it's not looking like a problem for him. Whereas,
I feel like he still has like more room to grow in too, honestly.
dude, he's played like 9 football games in the last 4 years.
But like you've been watching like the O line D line battles a lot more than I have, but he's like probably easily been like the best offensive lineman that I've noticed, or like he's like the most easy to appreciate too, or most easily noticeable based on how well he's been doing.
Him and Cam have been the best 2 linemen in camp, I think.
Yeah, I mean Cam is also playing against Abdullah on a handful of
I,
that.
I think even we've seen times where Cam's been with the first team and they've moved Walker over to left guard, and I think even then Cam's still impressive.
No, that's definitely true. That's true.
Mister, well, actually,
I was pretty concerned about Anton's injury at first, even though it now seems like it's okay, just because like we saw the impact of lost training camp reps last year with Devin Lloyd. So I was afraid it was going to be like a little bit of a repeat with that because people are, I think, just kind of like started to assume that he's going to be an easy plug and play for Jawan because, like that was like the one starting position on the offensive line that got replaced. And like it's a first round player who led up like 1 sack in the last 2 years. So obviously he's going to be fine immediately. But that's like kind of my part of my concern with like having a 6 for week 1 as of now is just that like we haven't really seen a ton of Anton, and like he hasn't been like bad or anything when we have seen him, but I'm not like quite convinced that he's going to be NFL ready.
it's worth remembering, I think, that Jawan Taylor wasn't a player people would have cared about losing until his 4th season. Like it takes time sometimes, like to me, one thing I've come to really appreciate since I started covering the Jaguars in 2019 is that if you're good in the NFL as a rookie, you're a special player because
Yeah.
most rookies are downright not good or they're flashy. There are very few who are legitimately good right away. So to me, I think it needs to almost be presumed of rookies that anything you get is kind of gravy, And that's I expect Anton to be their fourth or fifth best offensive lineman this year. I expect there to be games where people are freaking out saying, what the hell's going on? You drafted this guy, yada yada yada, because it takes time. I think Cam Robinson even said when they interviewed him, they're like, he's going to be a good player. There'll be some rough stretches, but he'll be good. And like that's how it is, So I still think he's going to be good. I think he has the size, the strength. He is another guy who he was able to anchor against Trayvon Walker. Like Trayvon's like the perfect limitless test to me because like I probably messed up saying that. I don't care. However you pronounce it, Trayvon's the perfect test to me for like how strong a tackle's anchor is because his bull rush is just he has a ton of power and Anton was able to survive it. So that to me is telling. So I expect him to struggle a bit as a rookie, but I also don't expect it to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there. Like I think he will be good. It's just that like we got to remember that he's a rookie. But I mean, that's my hot take for the week is that Will Anderson's going to have 3 sacks against him in week 3.
Really?
Just like you said, like there's going to be a couple of games that are like rough and that people are like starting to worry. And so I didn't really feel like there was someone on the Colts or the Chiefs.
I wonder if any players ever sacked Trevor Lawrence 2 times in an NFL game.
That's fair. I just thought 2 was.
I have no answer for that. Fair enough. Hassan Riddick might have actually done it last year. Now that I think about it.
Oh, sure, he might have.
Yeah. Man. See, there you go. Okay. I'll put it on the board.
It's on there.
It's on there? Okay.
It's on there.
Okay. Can you underline it for me?
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Should we move on to the next?
Oh, yeah. Still in the trenches, though, baby.
Still in the trenches. You want to do D-line or just front 7? I guess either or. We can start with the edge rushers.
Yeah. Okay. There's a clip of me like on 1010 saying I'd hit the panic button. I will say,
thank you.
I will say the graphic being Trayvon Walker when I said I'm more worried about their depth was a bit. That's more so my issue with them is I think Josh Allen's going to have a good year. I think Trayvon Walker will have a fine season. I don't think he's going to be a player that you're like, okay, this guy's unplayable or anything like that. Like, I don't think he's going to hit 10 sacks or anything, but I think he's going to have a solid year. After them, though, I'm more concerned with the pass rush group now than I was before training camp. If either one of them gets hurt, then you're just not generating a pass rush without like scheming it up completely, and people want to say Devin Lloyd. He got a single pass rush rep the other day, a single one, just one. And it was against Coy Cronk, who more or less controlled him with relative ease. Coy Cronk, who I believe is like 4th on the depth chart at offensive tackle, 3rd or 4th, something like that.
Yeah.
And Mike Caldwell took just about 6 questions on it yesterday. And he was like, no, he's not doing that. It's not a new role. It's just he'll do it in the occasional formation. So we want him to at least practice it
in certain packages.
Yeah. And I feel like the best way to sum up the edge group is I think through 2 weeks of training camp, Caleb Von Chaison's been their 3rd best edge.
As the coaching staff told us, their third guy. I was like watching them in the cornerback group, hoping that there was going to be like someone in the depth that kind of like improved a lot and like stood up and like made a name for himself, and that just like didn't really feel like it happened. Like they're just, for all the times that I would say the word impressive on this podcast already, the pass rush depth has not been impressive during training camp.
Like DJ Coleman and Willie Taylor are obviously just camp bodies. Jordan Smith hasn't really done much of note, like at all. Doesn't even really get that many reps to begin with. And Yusuf Abdullah looks like like we said, it's tough to be good as a rookie. He's already like a day 3 pick, so the expectation should be held back a little bit. I know people got really excited for him because of his skill set, the hype with everything. He got drafted later than he was expected. I thought he looked really good at the start of training camp because of his natural burst and stuff. But once pads have came on, he's been, I feel like, one of the more easily blocked players.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. It's like the burst is impressive, and then that's kind of it. Like his get off is good at the line of scrimmage, but then like once if he doesn't like win with that get off, which I feel like he hasn't even won with it, it just looks good. Uh, yeah, he hasn't done a lot. I feel like the most impressive like edge rusher, not named Walker or Allen, has been Deshaun Dixon, but
Yeah.
he's also like more of an inside guy now.
Yeah.
When they did count him as an edge rusher.
When they did the goal line defense yesterday, he was at 3 technique. Jamal St. Cyr said that he did an interview with him, and in the interview he was like, "Yeah, they want me, what's it called, inside on running downs and outside on passing downs." I'm like, that's backwards.
Yeah, that's totally backwards.
Yeah, but I feel like he's been impressive, but it also, I think he said in that same interview that the coaching staff told him he would have a better chance to make the roster as an interior player than on the edge. And I feel like that's also backwards. So
I don't know.
He's had a good camp though. Like he's had a much better camp than he had last year, and he made the team last year. So I don't know how you necessarily keep him off this year.
I feel like he's arguably had like the most flashy plays in like one-on-ones, at least that I've seen.
He's intriguing as like
wins.
Yeah, he's intriguing as like an undersized interior guy.
Yeah, I feel like now that like pretty much every veteran edge has been like signed now because Jan just signed in Chicago and Justin Houston signed with the Panthers. Like everyone's like, okay, Melvin Ingram, come on down. Here's our Arden Key replacement. You can play inside and outside, but the Jags are like, nope, that's Deshaun Dixon.
We have Melvin Ingram at home.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who else they'd even sign. Like Carlos Dunlap, he's really old. Robert Quinn's really old. I don't think they'd ever sign Jadeveon Clowney. I think especially one Clowney has said, I think after he got traded to Seattle, how much he hates playing in a 3-4 defense. Like understandable, he hated dropping in coverage and all that. And then last year with the Browns, where he basically got himself kicked off the team for complaining about them putting Myles Garrett against the weaker offensive tackles, which it just doesn't seem like something that would fly under the architect, Trent Baalke.
The architect.
Yeah, that one.
Someone published like 6 free agent edge rushers like left on the market, like literally like 30 minutes ago, and the list is pretty sad because it's just Dunlap and Clowney, and then like at least 2 guys I haven't even heard of. So
Anthony Barr interests you?
Who?
Anthony Barr?
No, I think he actually signed with the Saints today, pending physical. So that's another name off the list.
That's a bad list.
Yeah, I'm like, I wonder what cornerbacks are left. I'll look that up.
I just think like it's obvious that if they were going to add a pass rusher, they would have done it by now. Like there were so many other times to do it, and I get it. You can't add a guy who wants to be a starter, yada yada yada, but do something. I like. You can see Trent Baalke like watch the pass rushers intently every single day too, and I'm just like, how are you seeing like this unit and you're not like feeling, and maybe he is feeling the urgency. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it just, like I said, the starters to me, good to go. You can roll with them, you can win on them, but if they miss any time at all, they're screwed. Yeah. Defensively, that is. Again, they're kind of built like a team who, at least this year, doesn't think defense matters. So maybe none of this matters. So.
Of course, nothing matters, Sean, but that makes everything matter somehow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any interesting free agent corners, but
that's like, free agency.
Someone said like in the past week, it was either Bradbury, who's I was looking at the corners, that's why. Not Bradbury. It was either Caldwell or Josh Allen who said like in the past week that like the front end and the back end of the defense is married. And so like they could have like gotten like better at cornerback, and then that would have like ended up helping out the edge rushers because
Didn't
of
do
that.
that either.
But they had to at least add at one, and they added at neither.
I love how you presented a whole alternative option. It's like, nope, didn't do that either.
And here was I 3 months ago thinking the Jags would do both.
Yeah, it's definitely something, and that's more so what I meant when I said I'd hit the panic button. Is that to me, the pass rush stuff last year, you had Harden Key and DeJuan Smoot with your number 3 and number 4 guys. That's, to me, outstanding depth. That's the kind of room you should want to have, and it just does not look like it right now. But that can go ahead and shift us over to the interior defensive line. I feel like that's been that right now is the strength of the defense. I feel like Devon Hamilton's had a great camp. He looks so much more explosive, in my opinion, than we've ever seen him. He's given Brandon Sheriff some issues in team drills and in one-on-ones. Roy Robinson-Harris has had a good camp. Foley Fatukasi has gotten some hype from the coaching staff. And then Tyler Lacey has been a day 3 guy who, over the last couple days, that's Dave Campos' guy. The big Lace.
Huge. I did not know how big he is. I keep thinking he's Calais Campbell, which is mostly because he wears 93, but he's a big dude.
He is. He's impressive, man.
Yeah, I think he's been the lower depth guy who's flashed maybe the most besides Dixon. But then the 3 starters, or if in a 3-4 between Ham and Roy Robertson Harris and Fatukasi, they've done as well as I think the coaching staff would have wanted and is hoping out of those 3 guys, because as you kind of said, they're the heart of the defense, because really the Jaguars are going to get into good third down situations that they'll hopefully be able to take advantage of, because their run defense up front is stout with those 3 guys. So if they can get a little bit of a rush on third down too, then that could change the entire pass rush.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And that I guess is the big key to the pass rush this year is, can those interior guys get a push? Can Devon Hamilton improve as a pass rusher? Can Roy Robinson Harris, be consistent in that regard? Smoot when he comes back, Dixon potentially. Seems like early in the season would be the perfect time to give Dixon, some snaps there. So that definitely does seem like the heart of the team and the defense right now, I would say. We're going to hit you with one more break for our ads, and then we'll come back to break down the 2 final spots on the roster. Gus, off-ball linebackers. Everybody loves them.
I like what I've seen.
Devin always had a good camp.
Lloyd has had a good camp. He was he and Trayvon, I was keying in on them as the second-year, first-round guys who needed a boost in confidence as much as a boost in performance, and he has definitely had a boost in confidence, and looks like he's in the right spot way more, even if he's not necessarily making the play. And then just between the snaps too, just how he's walking around with his head up instead of his head down. I think it's been a big improvement from him, and I've been impressed with all 3 of those linebackers, honestly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Lloyd's had a great camp. I think him missing training camp last year, almost the entirety of it, with that hamstring injury, that he literally got it in the conditioning test before training camp. So it couldn't have happened any closer to camp. I think that really played a big part in his rookie season, because he looked like a guy who his head was spinning, when he was out there. Even when he was playing well, it looked like it was just a lot of information for him. Mm-hmm. And now it just seems like he has that information down and he's processing things quicker, so he's playing faster. To me, he didn't play very fast at times last year, even though he's supposed to be the prototypical, athletic, rangy, silent linebacker. His processing speed prevented him from playing that fast last year, where I think you're seeing the difference and the opposite kind of effect this year so far.
Totally. I feel that will have a potentially massive effect on the whole defense, just because at times last year, opposing offenses would really key in on him and just go after him in the run game and the pass game. And so just because defense is more about your depth than your star power, I think him not being a straight up liability like he was at certain points is going to be a big effect.
Because that's the thing. It wasn't like he was average last year. He was straight up teams were hurting the entire defense because they were just running or throwing at him. And it seems like he's taken that challenge. And of course, we'll see when week 1 comes around. maybe this is all smoke and mirrors. We'll see when the actual bullets start flying. But he's definitely answered the questions, I think, so far. And I'm with you. I think Chad Muma's also had some impressive moments. It's definitely not a competition, I'd say. I've had people ask me early on in training camp how, it's looking between Lloyd Muma, who's going to start. It's pretty obvious that it's Lloyd's job and that Muma is the backup.
Yeah, Muma's been taking like all second team reps.
Yeah, and that's fine because I can imagine the leash on Lloyd won't be extremely long, and that they'd be comfortable with putting Muma in there to start in defense. I feel like Shaq Quarterman has had a solid camp. Caleb Johnson's had some nice plays and pass coverage. He's a really good special teamer too. Vintrell Miller had a really good day in pads yesterday. Couple tackle for losses. So that seems like a room that's really taken the step forward this offseason that they needed, because they needed Lloyd and Muma to improve. And of course, it's early. We won't know until the bullets start flying, but it looks like they have so far.
I got nothing else to add. It's been like maybe like the strongest position group, definitely on the defense, or I guess them in the interior defensive line have both been just like altogether impressive.
And then that brings us to the secondary. Yeah, I feel like Tyson Campbell's had up until his concussion was having a fantastic camp. Him and Calvin Ridley were having some like titanic battles. Like they were like,
it was awesome.
It was fantastic. Darius Williams did really good against Calvin Ridley in yesterday's practice in one-on-ones. You can see he kind of really took it personal and accepted the challenge of Ridley only wanting to go against Tyson Campbell pretty much. And he had one play where he intercepted Lawrence after not allowing any separation. And then another play where Lawrence basically looked like he was about to spike the ball because Ridley wasn't open at all. And he was just like, okay, next rep. And then otherwise though, they have a lot of interesting guys. Like we talked about Greg Jr. I feel like Eric Hallett has been interesting, 6th-round pick from Pittsburgh. We talked about this earlier. He's not going to push Trey Herndon for playing time right now. Everybody keeps asking that. It's just not going to happen. He's running with the third team. But they have put him at nickel. They put him at safety. He's impressed me. I think he's got good ball skills. I think he's a guy to watch. And, maybe he takes a Gregory Jr. Year 1 to year 2 leap next year. And then next year is ready to push for a starting spot. Montark Brown has been, another interesting guy who I think has made plays here and there. And I think he's probably in a competition with Chris Claybrooks and Devon Campbell to, be the top backup option on the outside, because you've seen him, you've seen Claybrooks, and you've seen Devon Campbell all kind of take reps there since Tyson got hurt.
Yeah, I'm probably most excited to see Brown during this preseason games, because I think he's a guy that's maybe it's because he's a veteran compared to all these day 3 rookies and a couple undrafted guys, but he's consistently taking second team reps and is on the second team on the depth chart. And I think he was the first guy to step up in the starting spot when Tyson went down. So if in an emergency, as we've talked about, if one of the starters at this week's starting secondary group goes down and someone else has to come up, as of now it's looking like it's going to be Brown. So he hasn't stood out in a big way to me in camp. He's been good, not great, I guess, because he's had a couple of plays, and I definitely haven't seen him getting burned or anything. But I'm excited to really see how he does against other teams.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like corner is the same as receiver, where it feels like after the first 3 guys, there's 2 or 3 spots and 5 or 6 people fighting for them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that Darius has stepped up in the past couple of days without Tyson in a good way, but even throughout camp, I've been impressed by him, and he's one of the quieter, good players on the team, especially since he prefers playing outside, and it's not just the coach's decision. And then Tyson, I feel like he and Ridley were just the 2 best players in camp until he got injured.
I agree with you. I'd say right now I'm comfortable in saying Tyson, Darius, Herndon, and Greg Jr. on the 53, and then spots after that are left to be determined.
Yeah, I feel like Brown could be in a similar tier as Gregory, but we'll see if someone overtakes him.
Yeah, that we will. And then safety. No, nothing really, in my opinion, to note there. Like you're seeing Antonio Johnson's running as like the fifth safety right now. Like Daniel Thomas is still running with the second team with Andrew Wingard. You're seeing Johnson working the slot a little bit, mostly against tight ends. I know it was kind of made a big deal, him coming over to cover Evan Ingram at one-on-ones. Nobody talked about the result of said one-on-ones, which maybe should slow down the hype train a little bit. Like he did go over to follow him, but that was about as close as he got to him during
That's been
the
a
drill.
couple times, not just one rep too.
Yeah, so I feel like Johnson, like if he makes an impact this year, it'll be on special teams. And again, he's another guy you're hoping to see development from. Most of this rookie class, outside the first couple guys, I think you're just kind of stashing this year and then hoping to take jumps next year, like guys like Greg Jr., like Tyson did last year, like Walker Little has, like guys throughout the roster, like Kevin Austin, Devin Lloyd, etc. Like you've seen that improvement happen, and it really seems like that's what they're banking on with a lot of these guys.
I mean, it's a smart system because like it's good to kind of have like a longer plan in place rather than just like hoping for immediate production from rookies. Because as you said, it's pretty rare and just not a good formula for success. So as much as it might like be interesting or maybe good if like a rookie can overtake someone in like the depth chart at important positions that have like less depth, like it would be a good thing for rookies to get experience in year one and then actually contribute in year two or beyond.
100%. I'm with you. And then of course, Gus, special teams. Not much going on at punter and kicker. Logan Cook's been fantastic. Brandon McManus, I think, has been very solid throughout training camp. You're not hearing about him at all, which is so much better than last year when you were hearing about the kickers every day when Dave Campo was nearly getting assassinated. It was it was rough last year. And then the only interesting thing to me at returner so far has been, it seems like it's Parker Washington's role behind Jamal Agnew. And Heath Farwell was like, yeah, that was Christian Kirk's role last year, but we don't want him to do that anymore because he's obviously too important to the offense.
Yeah, that'll be a fun thing to watch for in preseason too. It's just Parker Washington taking a lot of punt return duties. I wonder if Cisco's going to get any in preseason either, because that's been one interesting part about special teams is seeing that he's been getting punt return reps. And by my count, he's only dropped one, but like he was a guy that Farwell talked about as like someone that's been consistent and been doing a good job for him. He just volunteered for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we ran through it all. We got a couple more, I think probably like 6 or 7 more training camp practices. Obviously, we'll have Jaguars versus Cowboys on Saturday. You'll hear from Gus Knight some point next week to talk about that game, all the exciting 12 plays that happened in the first 2 series. Gus, you got anything else for us?
No, we got our hot takes out. Score prediction for Saturday?
I'll go 15-9 Cowboys.
All right, I'm going to root for fun and go 33-30 Jaguars.
There's no chance scores 30.
I know, but I just had to do it out of spite for your
the hell out of here.
Low.
Oliver Morton's going to score the only touchdown.
There's going to be a Parker Washington punt return. There's going to be a Monteric Brown pick 6. It's going to be electric.
All the things that make you look smart.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Well, thank you for joining us. As always, we'll be back some point next week. John Shipley, Gus Logue, and we will see you all later.